Call to order this planning and zoning meeting for August 1st, 2017. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start.
Interesting.
Okay, I'm going to call roll. Please say if you're present. If you're not here, obviously you will not say that. We'll start. Commissioner Faulkner is absent. Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Present.
Commissioner Bowie?
Present.
Commissioner Crane is not here. Commissioner Fizer is here. Commissioner Meiske is not here. Commissioner Sarsfield?
Present.
Mayor Turnbow is not here. We have 5 people, so we have a quorum, so we can actually get started. We have no personal appearances, so the first thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is accepting the minutes of our July 18th, 2017 meeting. If anybody would like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Go ahead.
Was that a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Either one.
All right. Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. I think we're all in agreement there. Okay. The first, we have no old business, so we'll go right into our new business, which is case number 17024, G&G Storage Site Plan. So let's hear from the applicant first. So is the applicant here? Just state your name and make sure the microphone's turned on.
Oh, you got to push it? You're good. Okay. My name's Ryan McGinnis. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Todd Glidewell, who's here with me today and available for questions if you'd like. My address is 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit. And today the project that we bring is a lot consisting of 6.7 acres, more or less, for a new storage facility. It's currently zoned light industrial, and it's been that way since the 1970s. The project is similar to many of his other projects, which is the American Self Storage, located east of here along Highway 58. It'll consist of 46 20 by 50 large units to the south along the highway, and will be in an unsecure area for mainly small business owners to store materials like roofers or small business owners that don't have the ability to store materials at their current location, as well as an RV storage or boat storage. The secure units consist of 249 units ranging in sizes from 40 by 10 down to 20 by 10, and will be inside the gated area. Recent history on this site is the Board of Zoning Adjustments just approved the side yard reduction from 20 to 10 feet. That was in June 20th. As for the staff comments, I've talked with the owner, and we are in agreement with all of the conditions except for the one exception, which is the gate to the west along Ramblewood Drive. The fire department is requiring the access. We would just like to kind of upgrade it and basically use it as an exit egress only, and to our counts is be only like 1 to 2 cars a day, if that. And then it would take away traffic from the south entrance and exit should it get jammed up or become unfunctional, and allow people to get out that way. And the hours along that, or we're suggesting to have limited access to that area as well. And that's all we really had as far as main points, topics. And did you want anything or add anything? If you want, you don't have to. I mean,
Okay.
he's got questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll hear from the staff regarding this case.
Thank you. Before I begin tonight, I'll let you know, again, this evening, we are unable to broadcast information from the staff report to your computers.
Okay.
We're still experiencing a little bit of difficulties, but you all have the site plans in front of you, the staff reports, and I'll project them up onto the overhead behind you if you'd like to take a little bit larger look. If you have any questions, I can scroll through it and show you different portions of it if you'd like. So as the engineer indicated, G&G Storage, Mr. Glidewell is the applicant. And is looking to get site plan approval for a self-storage facility located on East Walnut Street between North Franklin and North Crest Drive, just east of the Ramblewood subdivision here in Raymore. In your staff report, you'll find a couple pictures that'll give you a feel for what the site looks like currently, and some of the natural features that exist on it, some of the natural vegetation around it that's going to screen the industrial use here from the more residential uses that surround it. So the first photograph shows a view looking north, sort of along the entrance of 58 Highway. You'll see a driveway that currently exists there, and then a little pad site to the side. I believe there used to be an office building that currently doesn't stand there anymore, but you get a feel for kind of what it looks like off of 58 Highway. The next picture below shows a view looking west. This is looking towards the Ramblewood subdivision. So you can see just barely a couple single-family homes in that subdivision, but for the most part, it's screened by some existing vegetation that will remain there. It'll be cleaned up a little bit, I would imagine, but for the most part, all that vegetation will remain. And the next photo on the next page 3 is going to show the view looking to the east at the Falcon Crest subdivision. You can see a lot of the multifamily duplexes over there. And I will note that here, type A screening will be required on here. I'll get a little bit more in detail of that further in the staff report, but you'll see there's a few breaks in the vegetation there that'll be covered up by about a 6-foot wall. It'll be opaque, so you'll get kind of a mix of an opaque wall and then some vegetation that'll screen like I said, the industrial use from the residential uses to the east. The existing zoning of the property is M1 light industrial, and it's surrounded by undeveloped single-family residential to the north, single-family residential to the south, multifamily residential duplexes to the east, and single-family residential and commercial zoning to the west. It's like, as the engineer indicated, it's about 6.76 acres. And then the future land use map actually identifies this area as appropriate for both commercial and residential development. There's sort of a natural break in the property where you'll see it's a little bit wider towards the front. That area is identified as appropriate for commercial, whereas the skinnier portion to the north of it is identified appropriate for residential uses. And then the major thoroughfare plan map identifies East Walnut as a major arterial street. Since this isn't a public hearing this evening, staff wasn't required to advertise in the paper, since they do not require site plan or require public hearings for site plans. I've included sort of the requirements and standards for site plan review for y'all's consideration. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to clarify it for you. But I'll move on to page number 7. The applicant sort of touched on this already. Previous actions on the property, the Falcon Crest subdivision located to the east, that was platted and approved by the city of Raymore in March 11th of 1985. And then the Ramblewood subdivision to the west was approved by the city of Raymore on June 25th of 2007. And earlier this year on June 6th, the Board of Adjustment approved a variance for a reduction of the side yard from 20 foot to 10 foot. The standard setback for a light industrial zone property is typically 20 foot. However, because this abuts a residential district, it increases that. The typical setback is 10 foot, but because this abuts a residential district, it increases that to 10 foot. So they presented their case to the Board of Adjustment, and they approved that back in June. The engineering division did review the application and the site plans and indicated that adequate services do exist for development on this property, and there's some specific comments in their memorandum at the end of the staff report. Some additional staff comments. The applicant did indicate he does own another American self-storage facility off of Evans Street and Highway 58, and he indicated there's a pretty large waiting list on that property for available units. We've included the development standards for an M1 zone property, and the site plan does meet all of those, given that they were approved variance back in June. They have also indicated they intend to locate the front row of storage units 15 feet from the front property line. And if you look back up at comment number 2, you can see the front yard requirement is 30 feet. However, you can see in the UDC that we use here in Raymore, there's 3 points in there that would let them move that forward 15 feet, so long as there's no parking areas or access drives that are installed between the right-of-way and the building, and a couple other ones that they're able to satisfy to get that moved a little bit closer to the front property line. There are no specific use standards or anything of that nature for self-storage facilities. Parking, they do meet the parking requirement. 5 spaces are provided, and 1 handicap parking space will be required, as well as an access aisle to accompany that. With landscaping, with M1 zone properties, light industrial, 20% of the lot is required to be reserved for landscaping. They're just above that at 21%, and there is a 10-foot buffer around the property rather than a 6, so they exceed that requirement as well around the entire perimeter of the property. As I mentioned before, type A screening will be required along the east property line, the front half of the west property line, and then the north property line as well. And I indicated that will be used with a mix of vegetation, and then he will also be using, and I'll pass this around, it's a metal panel which has sort of a stucco finish, and that'll kind of line the backs of the building, so it'll be that in combination with the existing vegetation and some other trees that will be planted as well. But the landscaping that has been provided does satisfy the requirements of the UDC, and landscaping will be provided around the monument sign that will be installed at a later date. Pedestrian access, the building is accessible by a sidewalk that exists along Highway 58, and it will connect nicely to the parking lot that's being provided. And as I mentioned, they didn't submit a master signage plan as a part of their site plan, since that's not approved as part of the site plan review process. But some sort of plan indicating where the signage will be and what it will look like will have to be submitted at the time of a sign permit, so it'll be reviewed at a later point. But they did submit part of the landscaping that is required with a landscaping sign, and that does meet the requirements for the UDC. The fire district reviewed this application and had a couple comments that were addressed by the applicant and staff. They first indicated that there was inadequate distance between the existing fire hydrants and the buildings. They use typically 300 feet between where the fire hydrant's at and sort of a 300-foot perimeter around that. So they were requiring the applicant to add a few more fire hydrants to bring them within that threshold, and they've added 4 new hydrants to satisfy that comment. The other one they had, as you mentioned before, was the access point off of Ramblewood. They would like to require 2 access points, one on Highway 58 and then the one that's going to exit onto Ramblewood Drive, so they do satisfy that requirement as well. With stormwater will be collected on site and transferred to the detention pond that exists to the north, and once it's treated in that detention pond, it will be discharged into an existing creek that runs, or stream that runs just to the north of the property in question. They did submit a proposed lighting plan that is in compliance with the lighting standards for the city. The lights will be mounted on the storage facility themselves and will be between 8 feet and 10 feet, depending on where they're located in the facility. Trash enclosure will not be provided as part of this property, so they're not required to provide any screening for that. However, any screening or any mechanical equipment or things of that nature that would accompany the buildings, should it be higher than 3.5 feet tall, it will need to be screened from adjacent properties or any adjacent streets. And then, as I mentioned before, site access, the primary entrance would be off of Highway 58. There will be the second access off of Ramblewood, and as the applicant indicated, they would like to for you all to consider that to be used for egress purposes only, for individuals visiting the storage unit for purposes. Staff did include staff proposed findings of fact for your consideration this evening. And since the Planning and Zoning Commission is the decision-making body for site plans, it is up to you all this evening to decide that on this meeting tonight. However, staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the proposed findings of fact and approve case number 17024, G&G self-storage site plan, subject to the following 11 conditions that are listed on the last 2 pages of the staff report. That concludes my staff report. If you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer it. You can address me, or if you have any questions for the applicant, just feel free to let us know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now if any of the commissioners have any comments or questions?
Question.
Okay,
Looking at your note here as far as the action that was taken on June 6th with the Board of Adjustments, can you kind of speak to what was the thought or the request to actually provide that variance?
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, the typical setback for an M1 zone property is 10 feet. However, since it was abutting the residential district, it increased it to 20 feet. The applicant indicated that in doing that, it sort of, especially along the narrow portion of the lot that exists to the north, having to squeeze those buildings in an additional 10 feet on both sides kind of limited not only the number of buildings that he could possibly fit on there, but the width that was required between those buildings for vehicles to navigate in between them. So with that extra 10 feet, he was able to squeeze in the amount of buildings that he was wanting to put on there originally and have adequate space between those buildings for vehicles. There were some individuals from surrounding properties at that Board of Adjustment meeting who had some comments and concerns that were addressed by the applicant, but ultimately the Board of Adjustment did vote to approve that variance.
I got a quick question here. Explain entrances and exits. What was the plan? I understand that the west is to be used once or twice, no more than once or twice a day, I think is what he said. So there's going to be one main entry to the south?
Yes, so the main entrance, I guess the natural entrance where someone would usually think the entrance would be off of Highway 58.
Right.
At the very southern edge of this property. There will not be a gate right there. The first, I guess, 2 rows of buildings, the larger units, those won't be gated in at all. So you can drive up there. The gate will actually be just right here. If you can look up on the screen, the gate will be right here where the smaller units start back here. So this area will be unenclosed with the gate, and the gate will start right here and be fenced in around the entire.
And that so the gate would be, that's to the east?
Yes, this is
Okay.
to the
So-
east. This is the east property line right here.
Okay, we're looking north. Okay.
Yes. The second gate would be off of Ramblewood Drive that exists right here. So this is a residential street that dead ends sort of right here at the division of these 2 properties. And they've proposed to connect to that and then put a gate right here for both fire access. And they're requesting that they also have that available for egress for tenants of this facility.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess to speak to that, either way, both of these, per the fire district's requirements, both of these gates will be required. However, what their concern is whether or not they'll be able to use this for strictly emergency purposes only, or whether or not individuals renting units from this facility will be able to use this access point as well.
And you're saying that as is right now, that won't be available for people to go in and out?
Ultimately, that will be up for the Planning and Zoning Commission to decide tonight. Staff had some concerns on, I guess, sort of the expectations of living in a residential subdivision. You wouldn't expect commercial traffic to go down there. However, this isn't exactly a high-intensity industrial use. It's a storage facility. So you're not going to get, 20 cars driving the street. As Mr. Glidewell indicated earlier, at his other units that he owns, you get maybe 2 to 3 cars a day that would use this street. So it's not going to be highly trafficked, but, just from the standpoint of, going back to the expectations of a residential subdivision, that's kind of where staff is coming from. But ultimately, like I said, that would be up for the commission to decide whether or not they would approve that. And he could probably, the applicant could probably speak to that a little more as far as why they're wanting that. That's just, like I said, that's staff's standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
any other comments?
Are we going to have a moment to discuss this?
I'm sure.
I mean, are you going to close down?
You can discuss it as much as you'd like. Do you have any, I'm, no. Yeah, if you have any questions or any.
No question, I just want to discuss it.
Okay, we can discuss.
Me first?
I think so.
Well,
Yeah,
I
before.
just have some general concerns. Probably maybe some other concerns are maybe shared, but sort of I know we're zone light industrial here. I think it's M1. Just a little concerned about the industrial creep, so to speak. I sort of made that up just now, but you know, yes, it's zoned industrial, but it's kind of creeping to the west a little bit. But with this whole storage unit proposal, and if I'm right, you all are, they own a the units that are down the west. I'm sorry, east on the other side of the street, or east on the same side of the street?
It's on the north side of 58.
Okay,
on
so
Evans and
it's orange, I think. They had orange doors.
it's a red building,
Red.
office building.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm just a little bit concerned about the creep west of storage unit. I'm also a little concerned about so many storage units so close together. Because just along that way, probably 1/8 of a mile east is the other storage unit, and then across the street is another storage unit behind Store More or something like that. I'm not sure if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's a lot of storage right in that area. And as it begins to creep west, it's just concerning me that sometimes storage units become eyesores. And it's a lot of space being used up without really giving a lot back to Raymore. In other words, we're talking a building or an area of this size. It'd be nice if it was some light industrial that included some jobs, or included, you know, places where people can maybe a little more productive than just a place to store stuff at. So that's kind of concerning me. Just a large footprint and not really giving anything to the city. And as you know, representing Ward 1, I feel like it's, if I had a conversation with 10 people on my block, 8 of them would probably agree that I'm just not sure about that usage of that amount of space. And then again, the kind of creep. The other thing that I was thinking about was we don't have any provisions in our code about the proximity of storage to each other. They have to be a mile or 2 apart, nothing like that. I didn't see anything like that. And I think that's something that maybe something to consider. But it just gobbles up space, and that's really my biggest concern and my biggest fear about, you know, how many, we got to be careful with this kind of light industrial creep to the west a little bit. And that's kind of bothering me a little bit. So I don't think I have anything else right now.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, I think it's been recorded that I've had an issue with this particular area here. If you look at the zoning map, it's more of a kaleidoscope of it, and I think that's partly at our fault for not actually having vision in terms of what we need to do with the available lands that we have here. So at least from that standpoint, not having a cohesive plan and at least not having, you know, the appropriate amount of voices from my fellow commissioners here, or at least my vote for right now is that, you know, I can agree to this and would prefer to table this until the next meeting to actually have additional discussion.
Spot, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
The other thing that I was a little bit concerned on this, and I failed to mention it, but thank you, Leo. I think he kind of brought it to my mind was, and I know how this is zoned, but when I actually visited the spot a few days back, and I encourage us all to get out there, because what you see on paper and what you see on your computer screen sometimes looks different when you actually get out there, and you can see a large, broad range of the area. Was the proximity to the townhomes. I think they're townhomes or duplexes to the east. And then there's another up-and-coming, potentially subdivision just to the northwest.
Yes, correct.
Behind some of the commercial. I understand the walls that by code must go up. But again, so close, having storage units, and I know we have it in other areas, but having them so close to residential areas is just a little bit like, I'm not sure what it'll do for home value in those areas and so forth. In terms of, I don't want to make a broad sweeping accusation against storage units, because all in all, there's nothing wrong with storage units. But just where that's located in terms of the families and so forth on either side, that again caused me a little trepidation. Because I'm going down, I even drove down the dead end that's already paved. And I'm seeing, nice day outside. I see a couple of families in the back on trampolines, and there's nothing there right now. Of course, there'll be a wall up if this goes up, but it just doesn't seem like a good fit to me overall, just in that particular spot. And we've got a lot of, like Leo said, we've got a lot of storage units, and I'm just concerned about the precedents that it'll be setting as well if we just continue to add things kind of hodgepodge in that area. So, all right, I think I'm finally done.
Thank you. Any other comments? Discussion?
Am I allowed to comment?
I think so.
Sure. A couple things really quick, actually. Very good questions. First of all, I always enjoy listening to your discussion from the commissioner. You always bring really good points to mind. And I just wanted to address a couple of things before we move forward. The first thing being, I know you made a really good point about, industrial creep, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that this is a permittable use within the zoning district. Certainly the applicant is within his right to propose this. I want to make sure, you mentioned tabling it until the next meeting. I wanted to make sure that, we're not, the use, I don't think of the property as what's in question. I want to make sure that we're deciding on the site plan tonight as far as what the use would look like. It's not necessarily the use of the property and how it's being used, but how the property is laid out. I just want to make sure that that is clear, as is most likely or most definitely a permitted use within that district. The second being, you mentioned there being a lot of storage units on that side of town, and certainly there are. However, as Mr. Glidewell indicated, there's a waiting list for that one. I'm sure there's a waiting list for the one across the street. So he's here to meet a need, which I can respect as well. But to the same point, you mentioned something that would create more jobs. Maybe that's not not what this facility is doing, but in a way it's still meeting a need for residents here in Raymore that need a place to store their stuff who can't accommodate their belongings at their property. So I just want to make sure that bring those 2 points to kind of counter the good comments that you made that I certainly appreciate.
Just I'll give you just 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Just to, is this, the use of this storage is not restricted to Raymore residents,
No.
right?
No.
So I'm not sure we have the statistics to say that it's meeting a need of our residents in Raymore. So yes, definitely meeting a need, but is it meeting a need for us? I mean, if 30% of the units is going to be taken up by Lee Summit residents and Overland Park residents and Harrisonville residents, then hey, they get an opportunity to use our space in our city, right? But it's not doing as much as it could for us here in Raymore. So that's kind of what I'm thinking when you said that. So yes, it is meeting a need, though. I totally agree with that.
Valid point. Agreed.
My name's Todd Glidewell. I live at 20809 South State Route J in Peculiar. I bought the storage units on 103 Evans Avenue 9 years ago, and I've expanded 3 different times. Our last expansion, we expanded on 3 acres, and we filled it in 9 months, and that was 260 units. We have a waiting list right now of 25 people. The Stormore across the street, I know he has a long waiting list, but I don't know how long, to be correct. But I get, when we were talking about jobs and about the front of this, where it has the big 20 by 50 units, we already have a waiting list of 8 people that rent from us already, that have like concrete companies, guttering companies, that don't have a place to put their trailers to back in. And the way these units are designed, in Johnson County, they have 5 of these industrial parks, and there's like 25 units, or 26, there's 13 on each side, and it has the 75 feet like we proposed, and all 5 of those are full. But it has a big garage door that opens to put your trailers in, but it also has a walk-in door to the side where you can put an office. They have electricity, they have lights, They're insulated so they can heat and cool them. So it's, the front of it is really an industrial park where people that do have businesses can go rent a place for $500 instead of $1,500 at actual big industrial park. So we've already got a waiting list for those, for people to move in that have small businesses already in Raymore. So it's not really creating jobs, but it's places for them to be. So, but I don't, it's, if we didn't, we've owned this land 4 or 5 years now, and when I started looking at the industrial parks, I thought this would be perfect for the front of this because the land is so narrow in the back, it's only 190 feet wide. So with the list that we've got waiting already, I know the storage units in the back, almost 80% of our people are Raymore residents. So, and I don't know what the waiting list is as far as, you know, Lee Summit or Raymore, Peculiar, but I know they're building new ones in Peculiar. They have them in Lee Summit all over, but I would say 70 to 80% will be Raymore residents. But the front will just be an industrial park for people to have small businesses. And like what we passed around is not really a wall, it is the back of the storage units. So it's not going to be a separate wall that's built, because the units that run north and south, the backs, and did we have a picture, or do you have a picture of the existing? Yeah, from our other facility. It's not a separate wall, it is the back side of the storage unit, and of course we're going to landscape on the outside of that. But we bought 3 acres 3 years ago and expanded, and this is what we put on the outer perimeter. So and the front of this industrial park is going to be like a stucco finish. They're going to have windows. We haven't decided on doors yet, but they're going to have a door from back. We're going to have like an awning on the top. So I mean, it's going to be dressier than a storage facility. It's going to look like a kind of an industrial park front. I wish I had a picture to show you, but if we've got a picture of the exterior of the buildings.
Commissioner Sarsfield?
I have a question.
Yes.
Considering that's not a separate fence, but it's the back of the buildings,
Yes.
are they all going to be the same color?
The backs of the building, yes.
Yes, I was
Yes.
thinking, because it still looks like a wall, a fence, call it what you
Right.
want, and you're going to have an opening for the driveway and so forth.
Right.
I was thinking, is there any way to, I don't know, without it looking like the side of a stadium wall or something like that, or a highway wall, something that could be done color-wise or texture-wise, or not so much texture.
Texture would pretty much be that, but color is, we can do
Right,
any color.
to make it look more
Sure. And we've got-
residential. I don't know if you can go as far as painting trees on it, you know, but you see what I'm saying, other than a
Right.
flat white, it's still going to look like a fence,
Right.
basically, when you're all done.
If we had another
I just
picture-
wanted some people to see when they look at their backyard, they're not feeling like they're enclosed into a,
Well, we're going to have 10 feet of landscaping. We've got trees running up and down both sides. And I think there's a landscaping plan in there as well. But there's like the back of, that faces Keene, Evans and Keene, but that's the backside without any landscaping that we have right now. So you don't actually see the storage doors. It's, you know, it's kind of a blocked-in facility where you're not going to see the orange doors, or you're not going to see what looks like a typical.
well, how big are these trees how large are the trees that you're planting? I mean, if they're 4 foot high, no one's going to benefit for it for 10 years.
Correct. But are they 6 foot, I think?
There's 6 foot, and there's also, keep in mind, there's the existing vegetation that currently exists. Most of that will remain. Like I said, it'll be trimmed up and cleaned up quite a bit, so it's not looking so overgrown. But most of that will remain in addition to the landscaping plan that is included in your packet tonight.
Okay.
But most of those trees, I believe, were 6 foot in height, and they will, only continue to grow from there.
But like I said, we have a waiting list of at least 25 people that changes month to month. But 80% of those are our tenants right now are Raymore residents.
So with, I a large percentage of us missing. I know we have a quorum, and we can't really speak to having a lot of us missing, but
Right.
I would be inclined to agree with Mr. Anderson that we table this until we get a little more representation. I'm not sure what the protocol is on that, but I would just love to hear some other input from other commissioners.
Actually, I have a comment.
Sure.
You were talking about how it doesn't really benefit Raymore residents if it's not people from Raymore, but I think in a way, I mean, that benefits us because people come from Harrisonville or Overland Park or wherever, then they come into our town, they'll be paying to use the facilities, they'll be stopping at McDonald's or Burger King or the new Cadence project and say, wow, this is a really cool place, and maybe they'll be, you know, they'll just coming here will maybe possibly, you know, lead to more business here. So I don't think it necessarily, by having outside, you know, cities store things here, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's, you know, I think it's a good way to bring some people in. So just a little something to think of.
I really think the people that we're going to draw from is like the Winnebago area and the Raintree area, because they only have one facility there at 291 and 150, and they're full with the waiting list. So, and their prices are 30% higher than ours. So I would think that would tend to be the area that we would draw from other than Raymore, because, you know, like the Harrisonville, Peculiar, they're all putting up new storage units right now. There's a new facility going to Peculiar right now. There's a couple going in Harrisonville, and I'm not sure where any, you know, on the Kansas side, I don't know where any are going in there, but.
So I appreciate the optimism, I do, and the thought process that it will draw people to the city. Again, though, I'm stuck on the location. I'm stuck on the rectangle between two areas where I see houses when I'm there. Not houses on one side, but on the east side you have the fourplexes or duplexes that are along that side, and the back of them will be buttoned up right near within code from the fence, the 6-foot fence or what have you. And then on the other side, to the north, I see those houses. To me, it's a precarious spot to drop a rectangle, which fits perfectly in the space it's already cleared out, but to drop a rectangle storage area in that area. Had this been further, if this was further east, way further east, you know, quarter mile east or so forth, my thought process might be a little bit skewed in a little way. But to me, it just doesn't seem like the right. It's not a good fit in a lot of ways, not just geographically, but in terms of, you know, there's. I understand the industry, the storage unit industry. It's as Americans buy more, Americans need to store more, right?
Right.
We don't have enough place to store everything, so we got to store it in these units. And there's a big, in terms of real estate, there's a big booming market in that. I totally get that. I think we need to be a little more defined in terms of what we're going to do in this section of Raymore, as opposed to, yes, it is zoned M1. I totally understand that, and it is, you know, your proposal's tight, very proper for the area or for what it's zoned for. I'm just having reservations about this particular type of building in this particular spot. So,
I just don't know of anywhere else in Raymore that I could put any, would be my concern. There's not I know of a tract of land that's affordable for this type of stuff in Raymore. Because I know there's a couple other tracts, like a 13-acre tract and stuff, but it's, you know, there's a 19-acre tract across the street from us, our existing facility is $2 million. So we bought this land 4 or 5 years ago, and we've kind of expanded as far as we can go where we're at now.
right.
And we've kind of didn't know what to do here. But then my friend at the bank says, go look at these industrial parks. So I said, that's going to fit perfect up front. Well, we'll fill the back up in a year. And it's a perfect, the way that land lays for what we paid for the land, it's perfect. But I've looked for a couple of years now of land east, west, north, south that would actually, where we could put this. Because we've been full for so long and turned hundreds of people away because the list changes every month. But
Yeah,
I
I suggest, this is not what we're here for today, but, I suggest at some point, we need to be thinking as a group about code for storage units, in terms of, it could be anything, certain amount apart, some things to limit the amount of storage units that we have in our city. And if you do a little research, and you'll find that there's been a lot of cities that have come up with things they put in their code for that. Not that we're here for that today, but it's just something to think about down the road as we move on. Go ahead.
If we weren't full with a waiting list of people, then I wouldn't be proposing this. But it's just, I think there's a need in finding another tract of land somewhere farther away. I don't know that there is.
Great discussion. Thank you for all the comments. What I'm gathering, what I'm hearing is some apprehension from at least one of the commission members, if not a couple. What's important tonight for the applicant is we need all 5 individuals to vote unanimously, in order to approve it. If we have any reservation, as Commissioner Bowie indicated, perhaps having the core, a larger group, whether it's all commissioners, as often we do. It's very unusual tonight to have just the 5. I explained that to the applicant up front. But if there's any reservations, the best thing for the applicant would be to table the item until your next meeting for further consideration by the full commission. If there's anybody that has concerns or thinking they're going to vote against it, that would be an appropriate motion to at least allow full discussion by the commission and then allow the decision to be made by the full commission.
So does someone need to make a motion to table it for the next meeting?
Yes, it would be a motion to table until your next meeting, yes.
Yep, I can, then, well, let's check discussion, make sure that there's no more discussion. Okay, I would make a motion to table the requested action by the applicant in seeking site plan approval for the storage unit facility, or self-storage facility, case number 17024, until we have full, or not full, but a larger representation of the commissioners.
15th.
Available.
The August 15th meeting, is that
August
acceptable?
15th meeting,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, all in favor of tabling this to the August 15th meeting, case, or forwarding case, not forwarding, I guess, tabling case 17024 to the August 15th meeting, raise your hand. Okay, guess we will see you on the 15th.
Okey dokey.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so that you don't have to print the plans again. Okay. Okay, I guess we will move on to, do we have a city council report tonight?
Thank you. Yes, so since we last met, there was one meeting of city council on July 24th. It was a short agenda, but there was one item of possible interest to the commission. Council did approve on first reading the award of contract for our 2017 sidewalk project. So this is a project where we're continuing, we're at the very end of the project, but continuing installation of sidewalk on at least one side of each street within the community. So we have a few of those segments to install. It also includes, at this point, 6 of our undeveloped lots. So our requirement for, in our newer developing subdivisions where we have a number of homes that have been built with sidewalk, we have those rogue undeveloped lots where no home has been built, we have gaps in the sidewalk, so we have our sidewalk and undeveloped lot program. And this year, we have 6 lots that have not had sidewalk installed by the owner as required, and so the city at this point will be installing the sidewalk on those lots and then placing a special assessment to recoup our cost. This program allows Raymore to have continuous sidewalk in our developing subdivisions. So it's been a program we've had around for about 3 years now. It's been successful. We do recoup any money, taxpayer money that's spent to install the sidewalk. And it provides, again, that continuous network. So that was the only item that I saw on the council agenda for the 24th.
Okay, and our staff report?
Rolling into the staff report, so we first indicate August 14th City Council meeting is when they will be considering our 25th Amendment to Unified Development Code. So those 17 minor amendments that the Commission discussed a few weeks back will be considered by the Council on the 14th. And then the next evening on August 15th, which is the meeting you just tabled the storage unit site plan to, we also have a public hearing scheduled that evening for the rezoning of lots 158 through 175 of Heritage Hills. So this was the application that the Commission considered a few months back. You actually had a recommendation of denial on that. It never went in front of council, or hasn't gone in front of council yet. The applicant took your advice as far as doing a master plan that you had suggested overall for the entire acreage. They have prepared that document. So they're coming back with the same request, but showing you how it fits into their overall plan, what they were doing with all of their lands. So we've re-advertised that to allow the neighbors to know what is being requested. And that will be, again, on the 15th for public hearing. And then for the September 5th meeting, we are requesting that be canceled by the Planning Commission. We will, we had a public hearing for the capital improvement program scheduled that evening, but we're going to push that back 2 weeks. We have a conflict with City Council because the Monday, September 4th is a holiday. City Council needed to have a meeting that week, and so since we didn't have any other applications to be considered on the 5th, Council is requesting that the Planning Commission cancel that meeting, and then we would have a meeting on September the 19th. So if we can get consensus on canceling September 5th, I'll let the full Commission know. And again, we will have a meeting then on the 19th of September. That would conclude staff report at this time, but I would, in tradition of past meetings, would like Public Works to give an update on what projects they have, so call it Mr. Krass.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Members of the Commission, we've got a few projects in the pipeline. This weekend, we are going to be installing the angle striping around Municipal Circle. And then, as you see, if you notice, the signs are up that will be converting Municipal Circle to one-way. Our annual curb project is underway. We also have received bids to complete the sidewalk of Municipal Circle and install additional lighting. The 155th Street improvements that I think if Planning Commission's been following, we have a cooperative agreement with Kansas City. That project will be advertised for bid this week. And that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Okay, guess we have no public, so I guess there will be no public comments. So we will move on to commission member comments. I'll start with Commissioner Sarsfield.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
I was going to say no comment, but it was good to see Mr. Krass. Welcome.
Commissioner Armstrong.
No comment.
Commissioner Bowie?
Just a quick comment on the sidewalks. They look good. I was driving down 58 in Belton in front of Applebee's and Home Depot, and theirs was really tattered and torn. And so I was happy that ours looks good up and down 58 on our side of the road. So they look good. No further comments. Has Qdoba opened or no?
Not yet.
They have not opened yet. They are going through training at this point in time. They have the ability to open, but they're making sure their staff is fully trained. And I think they plan on opening mid-August.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to thank staff for getting us all the information we needed and kind of helping us along in this somewhat different meeting that we had. I think it turned out fine. The only comment I was going to make was that this past weekend, my husband and I discovered Frisbee golf at the park, and they really have a great facility there, and it's kind of this thing that's been there a long time, and we just discovered it, so I'm kind of encouraging everybody to go out and discover something new that's around. It was at a rec park, and it's easy. You don't have to run, so I like that. But it's just one of those things that's like, wow, this is really a really kind of cool thing that's right here. So just watch over the pond. But I just wanted to pass that along. And that will be it. So I guess if there are no other comments, if someone would like to make a motion to end the meeting. Okay. A second?
I motion that we adjourn.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Everybody in favor of adjourning the meeting? I think that's unanimous. So, meeting's over. Adjourn, that's the word I was trying to search for.
That's all right. I was tongue-tied. I couldn't even